Hello my friends, it's Danny, and today I am sharing my 10 go-to pantry essentials. Now, this is by no means an all-inclusive list, but these are the foods and the ingredients that I reach for the most often whenever I'm wanting to make a simple, nourishing, clean, and delicious meal. Now, if you haven't watched them already, I also have videos on my go-to refrigerator staples and my go-to freezer staples. And the reason I mention that is because a lot of the 5-10 minute meals that I make, I will make by reaching for the staples that I keep in my fridge, my freezer, and my pantry. So all three of the videos play off of each other, and you're gonna see that some of the meal ideas overlap. So if you want to check them out, I'm gonna link them both down in the description box below. So let's jump in. The first ingredient you will always find in my pantry is an assortment of canned beans. And while the ones that I buy do change, I find the ones I reach for the most often are black beans, garbanzo beans, black-eyed peas, and cannellini beans. It's a great way to have a plant-based source of protein ready to go on hand. And just as a quick side note, whenever I'm working with canned beans, I always give them a rinse under some cold water first. This way it just washes off any excess sodium and keeps me in control of all the ingredients. There are lots of different ways that I'll use the canned beans. Probably the most made 5-minute meal in my house is rice and black beans. You guys have seen me make this so many times. This I do make with frozen brown rice. I'll mix it with a can of black beans, a little bit of coconut oil, salt, pepper, and stir that up. And it's just one of our favorite go-to 5-minute meals. It's simple, it's convenient, and it's delicious. Another meal that I often make is escarole and beans. That is a family favorite in our house. We also love to make black-eyed peas and collard greens. That's another favorite, and usually when we make that meal, I'll make it with a side of cornbread. Another meal that I'll turn to in a pinch, and this one is great when the kids have a lot of activities and we just don't have time, I'll just make a really quick black bean quesadilla. Another thing I love to do with canned beans is use them to thicken up a soup, and a great example of this is my asparagus soup that I shared with you guys not too long ago. Basically, you blend up the beans and it helps to thicken the soup without using any type of dairy or any type of cream. So it's especially lovely when you're looking for a plant-based recipe. I also love to make a simple bean salad. I like to make what I call a kitchen sink bean salad, meaning you can use just about any beans you have on hand with any veggies you have on hand and make a really delicious salad, either to have at home for meal prep or to bring along if you had like a potluck or a barbecue or a picnic to go to. Another thing I love to make with the garbanzo beans is hummus. Yes, oftentimes we do buy it pre-made at the grocery store, but whenever I get a chance, I love to make it from scratch at home. It is just so delicious, that little bit of extra love that goes into it, that homemade, made from scratch flavor, it gets devoured whenever I make it from scratch. So that I highly recommend as well. And I also love just sprinkling beans on top of a salad, or again, the garbanzo beans, you can roast them up to make them nice and crispy and then sprinkle them on top of the salad. I actually shared that in a recipe when I did my Caesar salad. Instead of croutons, we sprinkled on roasted garbanzo beans. So good. So clearly there's so many different ways you can use canned beans. I feel like we just scratched the surface here. I will link to all of the recipes that I mentioned down in the description box below, but highly recommend canned beans as a clean and delicious pantry staple. Another thing I always keep in my pantry is an assortment of grains and rice. Again, there's so many different ones that I'll experiment with, but the ones I have on hand right now and I tend to have most often are quinoa, farro, black rice, which is newer to me, but we're really enjoying, and then this boxed rice pilaf. I grew up eating this rice pilaf. I'm not sure if you have ever tried this one. I remember loving it as a kid, and my kids have the same love for it. So I love keeping this in the pantry if we're grilling or we're making like a really simple meal and I want to add an extra side, especially for the kids, I will make this rice pilaf. Quinoa is another one I always keep on hand. Quinoa is technically a seed while it's grouped with the grains, but because of that, it cooks very quickly. So unlike most whole grains, it comes together in like 15-20 minutes. You would just do 2 parts water to 1 part quinoa, bring it up to a boil, reduce it down to a simmer, and then once all that water is absorbed and you see the little white germ pop off of the seed, you know your quinoa is ready to go. Now sometimes I'll use quinoa in a salad, like my kale and quinoa salad. I have an Asian quinoa salad. Most times what I'll do is I'll make it for meal prep, leave it in the fridge just like this, and then pull it out to assemble those simple meals throughout the week. Or I might just take a scoop of it and add it on top of a salad that I'm eating to make the salad a little bit heartier. So So lots of options. Love having quinoa on hand. Farro is an ancient grain, and it's become one of my favorites because one, it's a slower digesting carbohydrate, which is great, but I love the chewy texture to it. It has a little bit of a bite to it, and it's so delicious. Again, it's great sprinkled on top of a salad just as a way to bulk up a meal. But I also love making a farro salad with it, and we make a farro and sardine salad with it. All delicious. Again, it's all about the texture. So if you have not tried farro yet, I highly recommend it. The black rice, I usually just cook it up as a very simple side. I tend to go for this when we're making like fish or chicken. If you've never tried it, it has this great texture. Again, it's slow digesting and it's very satisfying. Now, for those of you who've been watching for a while, you know that I also like to keep jasmine and brown rice on hand, but those I almost always buy frozen. And then I heat it up in the microwave. It just takes like 3 minutes. That is just what's working for us in this chapter of life. I was experimenting a bit with making brown rice in the crock pot. I have not mastered it yet, but if that's something that you're interested in seeing, let me know in the comments below and I'll keep practicing, and then we can make a video sharing that idea as well. The next category I always have and am very excited about are canned fish. Tuna fish, salmon, sardines, anchovies. I love keeping these in my pantry, and they are go-to staples in our house. I know a lot of people don't love the idea of canned fish, but I'm telling you, it can be rather delightful. When it comes to tuna, I always look for skipjack tuna. That is the type of tuna that's gonna have the lowest amount of mercury. And usually for tuna, we're just using it for a tuna salad, a very simple tuna salad recipe, or I'm putting it on top of a salad again. Just an easy, fast, protein-rich ingredient that is so convenient to have on hand because there's no prep going on. Canned salmon. If you're trying to work more high quality fats into your diet and you like salmon, but you don't like the cost of a wild salmon, let's say, buying in the can is a great way to go. You can get really great high quality wild salmon in the can. It is moist and flavorful and delicious. You can use it just the way you would tuna. So you can put it on top of a salad, or you can make a salmon salad. You could also make a salmon burger. You can make a salmon patty. There's so many different things you can do with it, and it's so delicious. So if the idea grosses you out or you're not into it, I want to encourage you to just try it at least once and then see what you think, because it is a staple for us. Sardines are another one. They are super good for you, high in the healthy fats that we're all trying to get more of into our diet, rich in protein, and so convenient. Something I love to do, I feel like this sounds like something like my grandfather would eat, is I take a can of sardines, slice red onions over the top, drizzle a little bit of olive oil, a good flaky sea salt, and a splash of vinegar, and it is so delicious. I know what you're thinking, but I'm telling you, it is delicious. And again, what I love the most about canned fish is that these are good, high quality ingredients that are super convenient. So you don't need to spend a lot of money and you don't need to do a lot of prep time. And you know that you have that option ready to go when you are wanting something delicious or when you're in a pinch. Oh, and I almost forgot anchovies. Now the anchovies, we either do one of two things. I may use it as the base of some type of sauce or recipe where you're wanting to develop a nice deep flavor. So you take a little garlic, a little anchovy, saute it with olive oil. It almost becomes like a paste. That creates a really deep umami flavor, which could be a nice base if you want to saute some type of like bitter green or something in that vein. And the other thing we do with it is we put them on top of pizza. So if we order pizza, we will chop up some anchovies and serve them on the side. We love spinach, black olives, and anchovies. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend it. So the next thing I have on hand are protein powders. Just as a side note, I do think of protein powder as a supplement. So as always, I like to encourage you guys to remember that we want to be getting the source of our food and our fuel from real whole foods and ingredients, okay? But protein powder, I think, can be a very helpful supplement, especially if you're wanting to get a little bit more protein in your diet and you're finding that challenging to do. So while there are a handful of brands that I like, the ones that I've had on hand most recently is I have this Terra's Whey protein, and I usually just buy the vanilla because the vanilla you can turn into any type of flavor you want. Like if you get the chocolate, then you're stuck with chocolate. You can't have vanilla. But if you have vanilla, you could add cocoa powder and turn it into chocolate. So vanilla is always a great base when you only want to have one. I personally really like whey protein. I've tried so many plant-based protein powders and I've yet to find one I enjoy. If you have one that you really like, please leave it down in the description box below. But as far as a whey protein, this is my favorite. And I use this really one of two ways. I will either add it to oatmeal, so I will maybe make my favorite type of oats, and then after it's done cooking, right at the end, I will add the protein powder and stir it in. I do not recommend adding the protein powder while it's cooking, because then the protein powder tends to clump up. So you want to finish cooking your oatmeal and then add it at the end. It's really delicious, so it not only boosts the protein in the meal, but it tastes fantastic. Another thing I will do, my son, every now and then he'll have cereal for breakfast, and if we use almond milk, he doesn't love almond milk, but if I add some protein powder to his almond milk, then he likes it. And again, it adds a little protein to what otherwise would have very little protein in it, right? Like most cereals don't have much protein in them. And then finally, I love making a good old-fashioned protein shake, and I've shared a handful of recipes in the past, so I will link them all down in the description box below. Now, another type of protein I like to keep on hand are the collagen peptides and this collagen creamer. If you've never tried the collagen peptides, this is a great way to add protein to just about anything, and there's no flavor. So you could put this in a glass of hot water with some lemon, and you wouldn't even know it was in there. I know sometimes people will add it to their coffee. If I want to sneak it into my kids' meals without them detecting it, collagen peptides are a great option. Plus, they're supposed to be amazing for your nails and your skin and your hair, so I love keeping that on hand. But what I do use personally on a daily basis are the collagen creamer. This is by a brand called Vital Proteins. It does come in different flavors, but again, I like the vanilla. And what I do with this is I put it in my coffee in the morning. So you guys know I love my coffee, and I kind of ebb and flow with how I make my coffee. I will get on like different kicks. But the kick that I am on right now is I make my coffee in the morning. It's 612, it's 18 ounces of coffee. And then I put that into my blender with 1 scoop of this vanilla collagen creamer, like a tablespoon of coconut milk from a can, so it's like really rich and creamy, and then a good old dash of cinnamon, and then I blend that on high, let it all get worked together, pour that into my coffee mug. I usually put it in a travel mug, and that to me is like morning heaven. I go to bed dreaming about that coffee in the morning. And a lot of times what I do is I will have that coffee on a morning when I plan on waking up. You know, I have like my morning routine, so I journal, I write, I work out, I get myself together, I deal with the kids. And so a lot of times I don't have my own breakfast for 4 or 5 hours after I wake up. So having that coffee, it's like a little mini meal. It's insanely delicious, and it holds me over till I'm ready to sit down and eat my breakfast. So highly recommend it. Okay, the next ingredient I always keep on hand is a variety of oils. So the go-to oils I always have in my pantry are olive oil, coconut oil, ghee, and avocado oil. Those are my go-tos. Personally, I don't buy any vegetable oils. I don't buy canola oil. I don't have any need for them. I don't mind the flavor of coconut, so anytime a recipe does call for some type of vegetable oil, I usually just sub coconut oil, just as a little side note. The olive oil, a good high quality olive oil, which I will use for salads and salad dressings. You can buy a regular olive oil if you know you're going to be cooking with it. This way you're not buying the highest quality olive oils. You don't want to heat them up, but you can certainly get a good olive oil and use that for sauteing and roasting. I also love the avocado oil if I'm going to be doing anything on the grill, or a lot of times if anything that you know you're going to be doing a higher temperature or something. Plus, avocado oil again is very mild in flavor. So if you wanted to, you could sub that out for vegetable oils as well. Coconut, as you all know, I use a lot when I'm baking. I also like it for cooking eggs. So a lot of times in the morning, if we're doing a scramble or an over easy egg, I'll use coconut oil in the pan. And then ghee. I love the flavor of ghee. I think it's like one of the most delicious flavors ever. And again, I will use that if I'm making some eggs or if I want to put it on top of some fish when I'm cooking. Ghee also is a very stable oil, so that's another reason I really like it. So the avocado, the coconut, the ghee, these are all really stable cooking oils. And that's part of the reason I really like to keep them on hand. They don't oxidize when they get heated. So very strong options when you're looking for good quality oils. Next in my pantry is salt. Now I know this might seem like an easy one to overlook, but I am telling you, if you as a home cook want your food to taste delicious, you absolutely have to learn how to use salt in your kitchen, because that is one of the easiest ways to pull flavor out of your food. So I usually keep 3 salts on hand. I keep kosher salt, I keep this red Himalayan sea salt, and I keep a flaky salt. I prefer this brand. It's called Maldon sea salt. And what this is, it's bigger crystals of salt. You can see they almost look like little pyramids, and this is what I would call a finishing salt. So anytime you're making something and you just want to finish it with a nice salty crunchy bite, Maldon sea salt can take that to the next level. A really fun way to use this Maldon sea salt is to make my chocolate chunk cookies and then sprinkle this right over the top, and then you're going to be able to like elevate that cookie. Becomes really fancy and it's so delicious. As for the red sea salt, honestly, I bought this for one reason. It was because Nom Nom Paleo had suggested it for her Kahlua pork, and I shared my own version of Kahlua pork, which was inspired by that blog, and that is what inspired me to buy this red salt, this Himalayan sea salt, and I almost always use it just for that recipe, so it's that good. And then kosher salt is what I use every day in my kitchen. I never buy table iodized salt. I always buy kosher salt. Now, a lot of people ask me why. The reason I do that is because kosher salt has a bigger salt crystal, right? So it's a lot easier to work with in the kitchen. And at the end of the day, you actually end up using less salt than you would if you were using a really fine table salt. Another question people ask is kosher salt kosher? And that's not necessarily the case. The reason kosher salt is called kosher salt is because of the size of the crystals, which make it perfect for pulling the moisture out of meat when they're doing the koshering process. So that's why it's called kosher salt. I like using it again because of the size of the crystals. It's really easy to work with and it's really easy to control. Another ingredient I always keep on hand is broth. Chicken broth, veggie broth, beef broth. I always look for low sodium and organic options. And this is just a staple. If you want to make a soup, a chili, a stew, something in your slow cooker, you're always going to want to add a little bit of broth. Broth is also a great way to cut back on cooking oils. So, you know, you can saute with broth. If you really didn't want to use an oil, you could just add a little broth to a pan and saute your onions and your garlic that way, and you would still get the same end result without using the oil. A few of the things I find myself using this for the most often is my turkey and veggie chili, my go-to chili con carne, my minestrone soup. Really, a bunch of my soup and chili recipes will just make it easy. And again, I'll link them down below. And one recipe that I think is worth noting is my shortcut chicken soup, which I don't have a video on, but I will just take some broth, saute a little bit of onion and garlic, add some carrots and celery, and then some pre-roasted chicken, so like a rotisserie chicken, and maybe a big handful of spinach. And this is a great way to make a shortcut chicken soup, especially if someone in the house isn't feeling well. You know, years ago, whenever somebody wasn't feeling well and they lived in a 10-mile radius of me, I would make them fresh homemade chicken soup, you know, starting with the whole chickens and the bones and all the things. But life right now, I don't usually have the opportunity to take the time to do that, but I do find that semi-homemade still counts. And you can really create a lot of flavor and a lot of love by making a simple soup like that. So just a little side note recipe to keep in your back pocket. Another ingredient I always have in my pantry, which is technically a grain, is oatmeal. I just leave it in a category all of its own because I am a huge fan of oatmeal. I love oatmeal. My kids love oatmeal, and I use it in so many different ways. And I have to tell you, one thing that I know for sure is the Clean and Delicious family loves oatmeal. My oatmeal recipes are some of our most popular recipes on the channel. So clearly my love for oatmeal is not mine alone. I think we all love oatmeal around here. Other than making oatmeal for breakfast, and I have shared some of my favorite recipes to do that. I have some really good oatmeal recipes, guys. I will link them below. I love to use it to make oatmeal muffins. My banana oatmeal muffins are one of the most popular here on YouTube. I have blueberry lemon oatmeal muffins. I will also use the oatmeal to make my 3-ingredient banana oatmeal cookies. I have traditional oatmeal cookies. And sometimes we'll just use oatmeal as the base for a pancake recipe, right? So oats are super versatile. I always have them on hand. They're inexpensive, they're delicious, and they are so, so good. Next up is vinegar. I always keep a handful of vinegars in the cabinet. My go-to vinegars are red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, apple cider vinegar and sherry vinegar. Those are the ones I almost always have on hand. I also like to buy rice wine vinegar as well. I'll use that for some recipes also. But basically vinegar, I'm either using vinegar in some type of salad or to make some type of salad dressing, like a simple vinaigrette, or anytime you want to add a pop of brightness to a dish. I also love using the sherry vinegar and or the apple cider vinegar to finish soups off. So if you're making like a big pot of lentil soup or a big pot of minestrone soup, right at the end, you just add a tablespoon of the vinegar to the pot and it just elevates all of the flavors. It's a really good trick to keep in your back pocket. And it's funny because as I think about it, I feel like I've never actually done that in a video before, but in real life, I do that quite often. So keep that one in mind. And then my 10th go-to pantry staple are canned soups. I like to have a variety of canned soups on hand. Really, this is for those nights when you just feel like you have nothing in the house, or you're gonna order, a pizza, or you just need something fast and easy that you can still make delicious. Canned soup is ideal for that because there really are some nutritious options out there which are way, way better than getting fast food or ordering in, and they'll save you a ton of money and a ton of time. We usually play with different canned soups, but definitely favorites are lentil soup, lentil vegetable soup. Kids love tomato soup. Those tend to be our go-to choices. And what I like to do is what I call kicking up a can of soup. So if you're gonna have a can of soup, and that sounds kind of ho-hum and uninteresting, find a way to add a little freshness, add a little life to that can of soup, right? So for instance, I might saute a little bit of onion and a little bit of garlic in some olive oil before I add the soup to the pan. Then while the soup is cooking, I'll add a big handful of chopped up spinach or chopped up kale because this just brightens up the soup. It adds a little life, adds a little bit of more energy into the soup, and just makes it a little more delicious. It gives it more of a homemade flavor without actually making a homemade meal. And something my kids really like is if I make the tomato soup, I'll add a handful of baby spinach chopped up into the soup. They love that, and it's a really easy way to get some greens into their body, and it adds a nice bit of flavor to the soup. So all the little tricks, always looking for the little tricks. So those are the top 10 pantry essentials that I would say I reach for and use the most often. Again, not an all-inclusive list, but it does give a good snapshot of some of the simple meals that we will make on a week-to-week basis by pulling from the pantry, the fridge, and the freezer. Again, if you have not watched the fridge and the freezer video yet, I do recommend going back to see them because they all tie together, and it might give you some good ideas of which staples you want to keep on hand to make simple meals that can work for you and your family as well. So I'll link to everything down in the description box below. I hope that this was helpful to you all, and I hope that you're doing well. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video with anybody you know who wants to make healthy eating easy. I'm Dani Spies. I will see you back here next time with some more clean and deliciousness. Cheers.
Good. You did it.
Okay, that wasn't so bad.